Hey people, I got this most excellent comment on this movie, The 600-Year Time Warp, from Susan K. Curious where in the Bible it plainly says the earth is a ball spinning around the sun, and Lucky Truth added to that. I had a hard time following that it plainly says it's a spinning ball. But it says it right here, greets you, Aristarchus, the fellow prisoner of me, and Marcos. So what I'm liking so much about that comment is that they are plainly paying attention and trying to understand. And so I understand that my movies are somewhat cryptic, and it's a couple reasons. Mainly because there's just so much in here. I can't go over everything on every movie. Every movie would be 8 hours long. And so you had to watch some of past movies to understand a lot of it. And I've got no education degree, but what I do know, everything I know I've self-taught. And I know if you ever read the book on how to put a Rubik's Cube together, you rob your brain the chance of teaching itself, of learning how to put the Rubik's Cube together. I was in the county lockup for 2 months when my brother brought me my first trigonometry book, and the jailers thought that the covers was too dangerous, so they ripped the covers off of it, and on the covers was all the formulas. I didn't know this. I just thought trigonometry was that difficult, and so I had to figure all the formulas out myself by placing basic numbers in and work it out and see if it worked out, and then changing the numbers to other numbers and seeing if it still worked out. And so I taught myself the formulas, and that way I could never forget it, because I didn't just memorize something I read. I understood it as I was creating it. So I'm not the most educated person, but I know how to study patterns. And I know, that the most educated people in the world was writing the Bible. And I know, when you write a letter, you might put the subject in big bold letters on the top, not your name. The first name that goes up there is to. The red letter is to who, and from at the bottom. And when you go to the library to pick out a book, you don't see the author's name in big letters across the top. You see the subject up on the top in the big letters. The author is those little letters underneath at the bottom. And they know this, The Art of War, the oldest book known. The author's down here. This is the subject, the Art of War, which translates in Hebrew as alchemy. And the sun's zoo, the X, this cross to, the sun cross to. So this isn't even the name here. This is a pseudonym that he wrote by. Zoo meaning the wife of Eve, because she was the mother of all life. One of the oldest books we have, the Iliad of Homer, and they'll say this has to do with journeys or travels, but it's all coded. This is daily, D-A-I-L-Y, the daily, and then L-I-A, lie, D, through. And Homer, this is, they say it's an ancient word meaning the command, the Omer. And that's the word for word in Hebrew, A-M-R, and he said. And it's the daily lie, and it's where the plants lie through to give the command. And the word comes from the heavens, where the plants are on that day, where the planets set on that day is the word of the day. And that's what you would name your children. And so the names of the people give the times of when it was written. All these names on the top of these Bibles, these aren't names, these are subjects. It's not Timothy, but it's the force, time of the O's. This they say is God, the theos and the theons, and the theo is the O's, is the planets, the ones that's making the O's. It's not Paul, a prisoner of Christ Jesus, in Timothy. It's the police, the spread as Decimus, the spread as the crest of, the Vus, the evil eyes of, to the time of the O's. So this greets you, Aristarchus, They'll say that Aristarchus wrote on the size and distance of the sun and the moon, but that's a lie right there. This is not the name. This is the title of the book. It was on the top, Aristarchus. And they'll say he came from Samos. And all these words that they're forcing on places now that they didn't exist in the past, these are all new names. They're trying to force over the Bible to places. But all the names and places were not. This is Greece and Crete and the Black Sea up here. And they say this is the island of Samos here. And they'll tell you, the astronomer Aristarchus of Samos, the first known individual to propose that the earth revolves around the sun. And so they wouldn't call him Aristarchus of Samos. The people from Samos, they would just call him Aristarchus. Everybody there is from Samos. And so it's not a name, it's a subject. And they're still not giving up all the information. He was said to be the first one to write about heliocentrism. Helio, they say, is the sun. But it comes from helix, at the center. And then an ism, they say, is a belief. But it means is from. And the helix of center is from. And so they'll call this the old heliocentric model, where all the planets revolve around the sun. But no, he was seeing it as the helix. This is a helix, where the sun's traveling and all the planets are chasing around it in a helix. So theon, the light, and theos, the O's, they'll often be with the word peri. They'll say it means concerning, but it means the perimeter. And the pantheon, is the gods all in the pantheon. And so all the clues come up in this RX here. They'll say this Arista is the head, a head, and the archos is the rulers. But you see this word come up in the first line of both the Greek and Hebrew Bibles. They say in the beginning created God the heavens and the arch, ARX, the arch. And you see it here in the Greek, in the first word, in arch, ARXH, in arch, the potion of the O's, tone, the sound of, hour on light, hour on light. In the arch, the potion of the O's, tone, the hour on light. And so the clues come from their interpretation. In the beginning, well, first you got to learn what the arch is in order to understand any of this book. And it's a little different here in the Hebrew. In the beginning created, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word to the same is, final M is an S, and that's the main thing that throws everybody off. It looks like an S, pronounced like an S, and you could look at it as the same, SM. This is what they say is the name all the way through the Bible. The name, and the I is to make, and M is from. The name to make from, WAT, what hears, EARX. And what hears is what the ear cross. What crosses your ears is what you're hearing, And the word to the name is what hears. So this arch here, you break it down more, and it's E, meaning the, and then A, the knowledge of RX, the first plant. The ancient letter X was drawn as a plant, and it's the first plant. The arch is a curved, symmetrical structure spanning an open and typically supporting the weight of a bridge, roof, wall. But this is called a true arch. It's rounded. And they'll say it's coming from the Latin arcus. An arc is just a section of the arch, is an arcus. section of the circle is an arc. You know, when an archer shoots his arrow and you shoot a cannon, it makes a big arch. You know, if you're aiming here, you aim up here and the arrow is going to fall. It's going to make an arch. Your archer. And so an archer is one who understands arch. And the ones who understood the arch was the archos, the chiefs. And so this arch, you know, meaning the knowledge of the RX. And you see that clue right here. You know, the RX de Luna, the RX of the moon, the RX of Mercury. Here it changed. They had room enough to write it out here. And so it's the revolutions of Venus. We know that's what that means because we can see this RX of Luna, 27 days, 8 hours. You know, that's how long it takes for the moon to go around. And the revolutions of Mercury, 7 days, 7 hours. And so we know that that's what this RX means. Now, Amanda informed me that nowadays they say the RX means retrograde, when the planet's moving backwards. But that's just because they're trying to change the language. Back in the day, the RX meant the revolutions. And it's the knowledge to first plant. The first thing you have to plant in your head is the knowledge of what RX means, the revolutions. So, greets you Aristarchus, the fellow prisoner of me. You know, it never says anything about Aristarchus being imprisoned, although they say a lot of them were imprisoned for their teachings. It doesn't say anything about Aristarchus going to prison. So a fellow prisoner means locked in the same frame of thought. And this word here tells what that frame of thought is. And a couple lines before this, you know, that you might know the things concerning us. But this concerning us, you know, is the things peri around the common on much. You know, around the common, not concerning us. And this and here, this is vav, and it means connected, not necessarily and. And to para call is, para is besides or adjacent, or, you know, running along with, parallel, or along with. And this call is, that's where the word calendar comes from, you know, is what the name of, what you're going to call it, you know. And so it's in the peri, around the common, on the much, to, along with the call is. And then a little line here has you read it backwards after you get there. And so it's the pericolysis, and then the ella coropatus. Ella coropatus. So pericolysis, they'll say it's this German doctor, but pericolysis doesn't sound like a German name. And you see that he's got several other names, as in Philip and Theophrastus, and he's credited with the father of toxicology. He was a Swiss physician, alchemist, lay theologian, and philosopher of the German Renaissance. Just couldn't spell his name. But yeah, they're still doing the same thing. They're exchanging the title of the book for the writer's name. And you'll see everywhere it's used, you know, the name's always different. Here's the para, you know, with the ESELSUS. You know, and here it's this ACELSUS. And here's a para X, you know, the TSXEL. And so it's not his name, it's the subject of what the book's about. You know, he said written this thesaurus, you know, the Theophrasti and Paracelsi Germani. And this is your word, this is your Greek word for treasure in the Bible. And the treasure is the source. So pretty much every word, it don't matter how small it is, has been mistranslated. That's why there's so many different words for and the and with, and then all the words between they don't define. And so it's actually a book. The translation is a book about nothing. So it's not just me making this cryptic. All these writers went to the school of alchemy, and they wrote cryptic because they didn't want to tell everybody. It was just for their homies. And so, yet is a pass as pays it tie. Is it a pass? I haven't passed by yet, as pays it tie is 2I. And then amass. And then move the S over, as to so share. XR is the share. And a share means mathematically divided portion. And most of the time they're talking about the heavens. And the masses from to so share at Surah. The masses from to so share 'em to share at Surah. Surah is salt. Surah is salt, sodium chloride. Or from the Greek, Surah, the row, the rank, the order, sequence, the turn. And so all these planets, they were given symbols of salts. And they would all have an order or sequence to turn. Sarah, rise, and then 2 revolutions as. To turn a rise to revolutions as, the RX as, of sun, aix, AIX. And so aix is a duck. This is aix right here. And so it's in the family of the Anatides. Anatides. Anatide is. Anatides. TID and the AE is ES. Anatides. So that's an alchemist way. The sun Anatides. And we think of the tides as, the rising and falling of the sea. But it actually comes from the word of ides, as in, the ides of the moon. The Old English tide, meaning time, the period, the era. The aches, the Anatides. Yet as a pass as pays it tie. To mass as from so share at Sarah rise, at the salts arise, at the turn arise, to revolutions as of the sun on a tides. See how they're trying to rhyme. You only know it rhymes if you understand all this, that's rhyming with the honor, the Sarah rise, and the sun on a tides, from all from all at as move, MOV, to move, to move, and then vav, UM, to move them, a mark as, a mark is, every little mark, every little click, move them, a mark as of, so if sin, SEN, IPSEN, if sin, IFSEN. So if sin on a nipsy as, born of a peri-ova, a circle, and then an OV, and then an O, and then a V again, a ova too. A ova is an egg, a peri is round the egg too. They all have orbits egg-shaped. And so if sin on a nipsy, I don't know where they get that cousin from, but a nipsy's coming from this Greek for wakefulness or watchfulness, a condition of sobriety. And they always try to associate it with some religious worship. With the word nipsies literally mean to drink no wine. And so it's not nipsies and nipsies is to drink no wine. Nipsies is when you've been drinking wine, you kind of nipsy there. But and nipsy, the and on front of it is the not drunk. So if sin on nipsies, AN, not not Nipsey's, on Nipsey's, as born of a AVA, born of a perimeter of egg, the perimeter of ova to the egg to, of vet, ova, OVOV, of a periova vet ball, BAL, ball, the labet, vet, to come, to go, to walk, coming from the Latin I go, the vet, to move a mark as of, so if sin on Nipsey, as born of a periova, the perimeter of the egg, of ova vet, to go out, to go, ball, the labet, the lab is the astrolab. You have received. When it says you have received, it means you shot, you shot it with your astrolab, you shot it with your instrument to get its dimensions, to get its position, the labet, and et is the feminine, and it means the writings, the feminine side. The et was all of the feminine counterparts of the gods of the Egyptian Ogdod. The vet, the born of a periova vet, the perimeter of the egg, to vet, to go, the ball, the labet, and it's just to rhyme. This SAL, that's your ancient writing of soul, the sun. The soul was the prime salt, the sun, salt, and fire. And so it's the soul at, and then the any, and then the other way is and. The any replaces the be. It means in, and then the n is ben. The sun is what they'll call that. That's in your child, the son in the Hebrew, and in the Greek they'll just say it's the in right here, the in, and so it's the soul at, the sun at ben, bn, in the cycle, in that time, toll as, and that's what you do when you lab, the vet, to come out, the ball, elavet, to shoot its position, the sun at ben, in that period of time, toll as. You have received instructions, the vet, to come at the ball, the labet, the sun at ben, toll as, the position of the sun in toll as. You have received your instructions. So my program's loading up and getting really slow. I hope I made this a little more plain here. But it was never meant to be easy. It was always written in secret. This Periclesis, he was an alchemist, physician, a theologian, theo, the gods, of logian, the log, the word of the day, yon of the day, the god log of the day. And so this theo only meant God to us that didn't know. But he was educated at the University of the Basil. The Basil, that's the word for the king, the kingdom, and the queen, the Basil, all throughout the Greek, the Basilius, all has to do with the kings. University in Kings, Switzerland. The basil is this ring around the outside of your watch. The basil, basilicum, the great basil. The name basil comes from the Latin bacillus and the Greek basilicon. The king, the royal, the kingly plant. The basil, a groove ring holding the glass or plastic cover of a watch face or other instrument in position of unknown origin. But it's this azimuth rotating ring that you find on all your surveying instruments and compasses, and it's kingly. You know, it's this outside ring out here where you see all these numbers through 360 degrees, where all your king's houses are, the basilicas, the basil, the kings. So they'll tell you Aristarchus was an astronomer and a mathematician. But in the Hebrew, they'll tell you a mathematician is an astrologer, not an astronomer. So he's an astronomer and an astrologer. And they'll tell you he just had this theory, but he couldn't prove any of it because he didn't have a telescope. And they'll tell you the telescope, you know, that the name was coined in 1611. Oh, that's about the same time the King James Bible come out, for one of Galileo's instruments. But we know for a fact that they had optical and radio telescopes 8,000 years ago. And we can see it in this hieroglyph for a telescope. You see it all the time, an eyeball in a circle. That's what that means, a telescope. And you see it here. You know, it's on a stand. These big telescopes, you didn't make a lens. Your lens was a mirror. It was a concave mirror. And you put it in a big building with a small hole on the top. You know, you would put it in a building that looks like this with this little hole on the top, where the light would shine through that one little hole, and then you would reflect that light on a wall, and you could see it would, that concave mirror would refract all that light into an image that you could focus on. And that's where they get this word, the basilicas, for all the churches. That's what they were, for looking at the gods. You know, they were refractive telescopes, where this is the opening in the roof where the light comes in, and it hits this big mirror here, refracts it back to this smaller mirror where you look through this eyepiece. But you don't have to. You could just put a wall up here. You don't have to have magnifying glasses. All you need is this one concave mirror. And that's what was going on here. You can see how he has this on the stand so he can direct that mirror and focus it in. And you see along with this, on this same, the most ancient art in Egypt, the same wall, he has all these parades of gods, you know, traveling in their boat throughout the heavens. And this is what the evil eye is. It's a telescope. And that's what this is, the crest of the Vus, the evil, and then the eyes, E-Y-E-S, the evil eyes of. You know, on the crest of the evil eyes of ancient radio telescope. You know, it had a shaft pointing directly at Thuban, at the North Star. It was always in that shaft. You see the same thing in all this ancient alchemical art. It's got this, what they think is Jehovah up here, but it reads backwards and forwards. And it's E-U-E-Y-E-W-E. Who I we. Who I us. You know, the watcher. Who I us. Who E-U. Who. E-Y-E. And you see this in this first line in Genesis 4:1. And Adam knew Eve, and bore Cain, and said, I have acquired a man from Yahweh. But this guy comes after attack, and it means E-U, who, E-Y-E-W-E, who I, we. And the one who's watching us is you. You're the one that's looking up at the heavens. This is you. This isn't God. This is you. It's who eyes me. Who eyes me isn't me, it's you.
Don't forget. I won't forget.
Alright, I'm going to cut this off here. Good day.